"Don't let people know much about you" speech. Good evening. There's something you need to understand, something most people overlook. The more others know about you, the more vulnerable you become. Every detail you share is a tool that can be used for or against you. Think about it. The people who seem the most powerful, the most respected, the most in control they the ones who talk the most, number. They speak when necessary, and when they do, people listen. There's an undeniable strength in mystery. When people don't know much about you, they can't predict your next move, they can't easily define you, and most importantly, they can't use your own words, history, or emotions against you. In a world where everyone is constantly exposing their thoughts, emotions, and personal struggles for validation, standing apart, remaining composed and reserved makes you powerful. Mystery is not deception, it's discipline. It's the ability to understand that not everything needs to be said, that not every emotion needs to be shared, and that not everyone deserves access to your inner world. People are naturally curious. When they encounter someone who doesn't reveal too much, their minds begin to work harder trying to figure them out. They project their own assumptions, they speculate, and in many cases they create a version of you in their minds that holds more weight than reality. That alone gives you control, because the unknown is always more intriguing than the obvious. The moment you lay all your cards on the table, you lose an essential part of your leverage. You become predictable, easy to read, and unfortunately, easy to manipulate. When people know what you fear, they can use it against you. When they know what drives you, they can redirect that drive to serve their own purposes. When they know what angers you, they can provoke a reaction that makes you look unstable. But when you keep your thoughts measured and your emotions in check, you become unshakable. Look at the figures throughout history who have commanded the most respect. They are not the ones who speak excessively or expose their vulnerabilities to anyone who will listen. They are the ones who choose their words carefully, who reveal little, and who allow their actions to speak louder than any explanation they could give. Their silence creates an aura of strength. People are drawn to them because they exude control over their emotions, their words, and ultimately, their lives. In your personal life, this principle is just as important. There are people who may seem like friends today, but could turn into adversaries tomorrow. There are those who listen to your struggles not because they care, but because they're collecting ammunition for the future. There are those who will smile to your face while secretly hoping for your failure. When you guard your thoughts and emotions, you protect yourself from being a pawn in someone else's game. This doesn't mean you should be cold or distant. It doesn't mean you should never open up. It means you should be selective. Not everyone deserves access to your inner world. Some people have earned the right to know you on a deeper level, while others only need to see the surface. Recognizing the difference is one of the most valuable skills you can develop. Mystery commands respect. It creates intrigue. It forces people to focus on what you do rather than what you say. And most importantly, it keeps the power where it belongs, in your hands. Not all openness is strength. There is a difference between sharing wisely and exposing yourself recklessly. Many people believe that vulnerability is the key to connection, that by revealing their fears, insecurities, and struggles, they create deeper bonds with others. While this can be true in the right circumstances, the reality is that not everyone deserves access to your vulnerabilities. When you expose too much, too quickly, or to the wrong people, you give them the tools to manipulate, judge, or even undermine you. Selective vulnerability is about choosing when, where, and with whom to be open. It's about understanding that while honesty is important, discretion is power. There are people who will appear to care, who will listen attentively, and who will even encourage you to share more, but not out of genuine concern. Some listen simply to gather information. They take note of your weaknesses, your triggers, and your emotional wounds, storing them away for a time when it benefits them to use them against you. Consider how many times people have shared something deeply personal, only to later regret it. A moment of honesty, shared in confidence, can easily be repeated, twisted, or spread beyond what was intended. Even in friendships and relationships, where trust is assumed, the information you share can become leverage in future conflicts. What you reveal in vulnerability today can be used as a weapon against you tomorrow. This doesn't mean you should become emotionally closed off. True strength isn't about building walls. It's about building doors that only open for the right people. The right people will respect your boundaries. They won't pressure you to share more than you're comfortable with, nor will they use your openness as a way to gain control. They will listen with empathy, not curiosity. It's also important to recognize that not every situation calls for emotional exposure. Some moments require restraint. There is immense strength in knowing that you don't have to explain yourself to everyone. You don't have to justify your feelings, your decisions, or your past to those who haven't earned that level of trust. Sometimes the best response to prying questions is silence. Sometimes the best way to protect your emotional energy is by keeping certain things to yourself. In professional settings, oversharing can be particularly dangerous. Many people make the mistake of treating colleagues like close friends, revealing personal struggles, frustrations, or insecurities that later impact their reputation. The workplace is not the place for unfiltered vulnerability. People judge even when they don't intend to. What you say in passing, an admission of stress, self-doubt, or personal hardship can be remembered long after the moment has passed. It can shape how others perceive your competence, your reliability, and even your ability to lead. Selective vulnerability also applies to social media, where oversharing has become normalized. Many people post about their personal battles, hoping for support or validation, only to face unintended consequences. The internet never forgets. What you share today may resurface years later, interpreted differently, seen by different eyes. Strangers do not need access to your struggles. Your private pain should not be public entertainment. This is not about dishonesty. It's not about suppressing emotions or pretending to be invulnerable. It's about wisdom, knowing who deserves to see your true self and who has only earned the surface version of you. It's about self-respect, understanding that your emotions and experiences are valuable and not everyone has the right to access them. And most of all, it's about control, because when you are selective with your vulnerability, you remain in charge of your own story. People will take as much as you allow. If you don't set boundaries, others will set them for you and not in your favor. Boundaries are not about shutting people out. They are about preserving your energy, protecting your mental and emotional well-being, and ensuring that you are in control of your own life. Without them, you become susceptible to the demands, expectations, and manipulations of those who do not have your best interests at heart. Many struggle with boundaries because they fear rejection, conflict, or disappointing others. They believe that saying no makes them unkind, that limiting access to their time or emotions makes them selfish. But the truth is, people who respect you will also respect your boundaries. Those who push against them, guilt trip you, or try to manipulate you into bending your limits are the very ones who benefit from your lack of them. Setting boundaries means recognizing that you are not responsible for managing everyone else's emotions, expectations, or problems. You cannot pour from an empty cup. If you constantly say yes to every request, every favor, every emotional burden, you will eventually deplete yourself. There is no nobility in burnout, no strength in allowing yourself to be drained by those who take but never give. Emotional boundaries are just as important as physical ones. Not everyone deserves access to your thoughts, feelings, or personal life. Some people seek connection not because they value you, but because they seek to control, criticize, or use you. If you allow others unrestricted access to your emotions, you give them the power to influence your state of mind. The wrong people will exploit this, using guilt, anger, or manipulation to get what they want. You are not obligated to be someone's emotional dumping ground or to endure toxic behavior just because you care about them. Time boundaries are equally critical. Your time is your most valuable resource, and yet it is the easiest thing to waste if you don't guard it carefully. People will make demands of your time, whether through work, social obligations, or personal favors. If you don't learn to say no, you will find yourself constantly prioritizing others at the expense of your own growth and well-being. Every time you agree to something out of guilt or obligation rather than genuine willingness, you are sacrificing time that could be spent on things that truly matter to you. In professional settings, maintaining boundaries is essential for respect. If you are always available, always saying yes, and never setting limits on what is acceptable, others will come to see you as someone who can be taken advantage of. Overworking yourself to prove your worth does not make you more valuable. It makes you more expendable. True professionals command respect by knowing their limits and enforcing them. They understand that being constantly accessible is not a sign of dedication, but of poor self-management. Personal relationships also require firm boundaries. Whether with family, friends, or romantic partners, boundaries create healthy dynamics. They allow you to maintain your individuality, protect your peace, and ensure that relationships are built on mutual respect rather than control. If someone truly values you, they will respect your need for space, your right to say no, and your limits on what you will tolerate. Those who react negatively to your boundaries are revealing something about their character, not yours. Many people struggle with guilt when setting boundaries. But it's important to remember, your needs are just as valid as anyone else's. You do not exist to please others at your own expense. The people who truly care about you will not be upset by your boundaries, they will appreciate them. And those who resent them, they were only interested in what they could take from you in the first place. Maintaining boundaries is not about being harsh or unkind. It's about self-respect. It's about knowing your worth and ensuring that others recognize it too. It's about keeping control over your life rather than allowing others to dictate your time, energy, and emotions. The moment you begin enforcing your boundaries, you will notice a shift. People will either step up and respect them, or they will fade away because they were never there for the right reasons to begin with. Either way, you win. If you do not control your own narrative, someone else will do it for you. People are always forming opinions, making assumptions, and filling in gaps with their own interpretations. If you are not intentional about how you present yourself, how you respond to situations, and what you allow others to believe about you, then you give up control over how you are perceived, and ultimately, how you are treated. Controlling the narrative does not mean being dishonest or manipulative. It means being aware of the story that is being told about you and ensuring that it aligns with the truth you want to be known. It means choosing your words carefully, managing your emotions, and understanding that perception shapes reality. The way you carry yourself, the things you say, and even the things you choose not to say, all contribute to the way people see you. There is power in knowing what to reveal and what to keep private. If you give people too much information, they will craft their own version of your story, one that may not be accurate and one that may not serve you well. People interpret details through their own biases, emotions, and perspectives. They will take a small piece of information and turn it into a defining trait, whether it's true or not. A moment of weakness can be exaggerated into a pattern of failure. A single mistake can be retold as a fundamental flaw in your character. When you understand this, you realize how important it is to be the author of your own story rather than allowing others to write it for you. Silence, when used correctly, is one of the most powerful tools in controlling the narrative. When you respond to every criticism, every rumor, or every misunderstanding, you give people more material to work with. You invite more discussion, more speculation, and more distortion of the truth. But when you remain composed, when you choose not to engage in unnecessary battles, you maintain control. You dictate what is worth addressing and what is beneath you. Your actions should speak louder than your words. If you constantly feel the need to explain yourself, justify your choices, or prove your worth, then you are not in control of your own story. You are reacting to the stories others are telling about you. Instead of trying to convince people, show them. Instead of defending your reputation, build it through consistency and integrity. The most powerful individuals do not chase approval. They establish who they are through their actions, and the world adjusts accordingly. In professional settings, controlling the narrative is critical. If you do not define your role, your value, and your contributions, others will decide for you. Your work ethic, your confidence, and the way you carry yourself will determine whether people see you as a leader or just another replaceable piece in the system. If you allow others to paint you as weak, unsure, or lacking direction, that image will follow you, even if it is not true. This is why it is essential to establish your presence, take ownership of your work, and ensure that your contributions are recognized. In personal relationships, controlling the narrative means setting the tone for how people treat you. If you allow yourself to be labeled as overly emotional, unreliable, or incapable, then that is the image that will stick. If you respond to disrespect with silence or acceptance, you reinforce the idea that it is acceptable. People will treat you according to the standard you set for yourself. If you command respect, maintain boundaries, and refuse to engage in drama or gossip, you send a clear message about who you are and what you stand for. Social media has made it easier than ever for people to lose control of their own narratives. Every post, every comment, and every interaction becomes part of the public image you create, whether intentional or not. Oversharing, reacting impulsively, or engaging in unnecessary arguments weakens your ability to control how you are perceived. What you put out into the world should always align with the image you want to project. At the core of controlling the narrative is self-awareness. You must know who you are, what you stand for, and what image you want to project. You must be intentional with your words, disciplined in your actions, and strategic in your responses. When you take control of your own story, you prevent others from twisting it to fit their own agendas. You decide how you are remembered, how you are respected, and ultimately, how you shape your own future. Silence is one of the most underrated forms of power. In a world where people feel the need to speak constantly, to justify themselves, to react to every comment, and to fill every moment with noise, those who master silence stand out. Silence commands attention. It forces people to listen when you finally do speak. It gives you control over your emotions, your responses, and the way others perceive you. Many people mistake silence for weakness, but in reality, silence is strength in its purest form. It is the ability to resist the impulse to react immediately, to withhold unnecessary explanations, and to maintain composure even when provoked. It is the refusal to be pulled into meaningless arguments, the discipline to listen more than you speak, and the wisdom to understand that not everything requires a response. The ability to stay silent in key moments is one of the greatest signs of self-control. When someone insults you, silence strips them of the reaction they crave. When people gossip about you, silence denies them more fuel to keep the conversation going. When you are faced with conflict, silence allows you to observe, assess, and respond on your own terms, rather than being dragged into an emotional battle you didn't choose. Silence gives you leverage. In negotiations, the person who speaks less holds the advantage. When you speak too much, you reveal your thoughts, your emotions, and your strategies. But when you remain quiet, you force the other person to reveal their position first. This applies to business, to relationships, and to every area of life. People who cannot tolerate silence will rush to fill it, often exposing more than they intended. A well-timed pause can be more powerful than any argument. There is also strength in refusing to explain yourself unnecessarily. Many people feel an overwhelming need to justify their choices, to seek approval, or to convince others that they are right. But the truth is, you do not owe an explanation to everyone. The more you explain, the more you invite others to question, judge, and dissect your decisions. Those who are truly confident in themselves do not waste energy trying to convince others. They simply act and let the results speak for themselves. There is also strength in refusing to explain yourself unnecessarily. Many people feel an overwhelming need to justify their choices, to seek approval, or to convince others that they are right. But the truth is, you do not owe an explanation to everyone. The more you explain, the more you invite others to question, judge, and dissect your decisions. Those who are truly confident in themselves do not waste energy trying to convince others. They simply act and let the results speak for themselves. In personal relationships, silence can be a test of power. When emotions run high, when conflicts arise, and when words are used as weapons, the ability to stay silent can prevent escalation. Not every accusation needs a response. Not every criticism deserves a rebuttal. Sometimes the most effective way to disarm someone is to let their words hang in the air, unchallenged. When people do not get the reaction they expect, they lose control. They either reconsider their words or reveal more about themselves than they intended. Silence also cultivates presence. People who are constantly talking often fail to truly listen. But those who embrace silence develop a deeper understanding of the world around them. They observe, they analyze, and they absorb information that others miss. They are not distracted by the need to be heard. They are focused on understanding. This makes them wiser, sharper, and more difficult to manipulate. Even in social settings, silence can be a source of respect. The person who speaks less but speaks with purpose is often viewed as more intelligent, more competent, and more confident. When you choose your words carefully, when you refrain from speaking just to fill space, people listen more when you finally do speak. They recognize that when you talk, it is because you have something worth saying. There is also a deep personal strength in silence. It teaches patience. It builds resilience. It allows you to process emotions without reacting impulsively. Many of the greatest leaders, thinkers, and warriors in history understood the power of silence. They knew that words spoken in anger or desperation could not be taken back. They knew that silence forces others to wonder what you are thinking, rather than handing them all the information they need. Silence is not passivity. It is not avoidance. It is a choice, a tool that, when used wisely, can give you more power than any loud voice ever could. When you master silence, you master yourself. And when you master yourself, you become untouchable.